Introducing the Bite Me Cannabis Club. The Bite Me Cannabis Club aims to be an inclusive online space for cannabis lovers. Whether you're simply curious about how cannabis can improve your life or you're fully seasoned, there's always more to learn. When you join the Bite Me Cannabis Club, you'll have access to like-minded people interested in cannabis, monthly workshops, live Q&As, recipes and recipe swaps, digital cookbooks, a fully functional chat feature, and a whole lot more. For a limited time, it's only $5 a month with a 30-day free trial so you can try it out and see if it's right for you. This isn't just another Facebook group or confusing Discord channel. I carefully chose a platform that offers a clear, uncluttered, and seamless community experience. See for yourself, join today, say hello. I can't wait to connect with you there. Join the Bite Me Cannabis Club today. Link in your podcast app. In this episode, we're looking at Canna flower cookies. Welcome to Bite Me, the show about edibles where I help you take control of your high life. I am your host, Marge, and I just want to say thank you for lending me your ears and spending a little bit of time with me today. This is going to be a great episode, but before we get into it, I just want to mention a couple of things. First of all, shout out to Daryl. Hi, Daryl. If you're listening to this, Daryl from Ontario, he left me a voice message to say that he had made the pumpkin muffins. And if you haven't had a chance to try those pumpkin muffins from an episode last spring, I think, I'll link to it in the show notes. I do recommend you give them a try because they are moist and delicious, and pumpkins, you just use canned pumpkin for these, and that is starting to pop up in grocery stores all over the place, perhaps more so in Canada than elsewhere because, of course, the Canadian Thanksgiving is coming up in a few weeks, actually, just 3 weeks away, I think, at the time of this recording, or I forget how many weeks away, but it's coming up. But it will be readily available probably everywhere because, of course, who doesn't love a little bit of pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving? So that is a fun recipe to make. And he did mention that he added Canna sugar to up the potency of that particular recipe. I love it. That is the whole point of taking control of your high life, because you can modify and change things and redo them to how you like to do them. So if you're doing those pumpkin muffins and you want to up the ante a little bit, by all means, do your infusion of, say, coconut oil or infused butter or what have you. Add some Canna sugar. And that way you can add a little bit extra potency without compromising the taste. So give them a try. I'll link to it in the show notes. Another thing I want to mention is that I've been putting some, I guess you could call them Easter eggs. Isn't that what they call them when there's like a little surprise somewhere, an Easter egg in these episodes? And I'm just wondering if anybody has noticed them or not. That's all. Have you? Have you not? Let me know. You can send me an email, bitemepodcast@fastmail.com, or once again, use that voice message feature because it's so much fun to hear somebody's voice, and I can reply by voice as well. So those are all in the show notes too. Finally, if you haven't had a chance to do the community poll, and I know that this little message is running at the beginning of the show as well, so I'll keep this brief. Please do. It means a lot. The answers I've gotten so far have been very interesting, and I really appreciate anybody who's taken the time to do that so far. So the link will be in the show notes for that as well, I believe. Now, the Canna flour chocolate chip cookie. So one of the reasons I wanted to do this is because I made this Canna flour recently. If you have had the chance to listen to that episode, perhaps you've had a chance to do it yourself. But I find that so intriguing because I really expected the taste of the cannabis to shine through a lot more than it does. And I did make the pita. So when I made the Canna flour, and they suggested trying pita, I made those pitas. I didn't really notice a strong cannabis flavor. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to test it out as well, because to date, I have been making everything via your typical infusion, your more traditional infusion. So if I'm making cookies, I'm adding an infused coconut oil or infused butter. And that's usually my main way to infuse things, is by an oil or a butter. Sometimes I play around with sugars and salts as well, or alcohols. If I've done cream, like you can go on the recipes page and find all the different infusion options there and how to make them. So if that's something you're looking for, do check that out on the website. But for the most part, I've done more traditional ways of infusing food. So this canna flower thing, really, I mean, it's decarboxylated cannabis, so it's activated. So there's no reason why it wouldn't work. But I always had this thing in my mind that is, if you just added weed into your recipe, it was going to taste super weedy. And that might be the case, but the way this is done, I have been finding the opposite. But I really wanted to put it to the test. What if I infused a cookie with the flour, but not an infused oil? So these cookies that I've made for this one, and I'm going to share the recipe. It is a new recipe, and it's for a classic chocolate chip cookie from the Chef Steps website, which is a fantastic website. I have a monthly membership because I do use it a fair bit for looking up things just for my own cooking needs, because I like to cook and spend time in the kitchen. And sometimes you're looking for some inspiration, whether you're infusing it or just cooking it for mere mortals. So I do like to use that website. I pay a small monthly fee for the pro services, if you will. And I am no way affiliated with these people, but I think they do a fantastic job. So it's worth checking out for sure. But I will share the recipe in the show notes. Just know that the recipe came from Chef Steps, and it was those fine folks over there who created this chocolate chip cookie recipe, and they turned out great. But I wanted to try it with just the cannabis flower and not infusing the oil that goes into it or the fat. And I thought that would give it a real test, because then I could also ascertain how strong they would be if I was just throwing cannabis into the flour. And, would they get me high just on their own? In fact, you could do it with those pumpkin muffins. There's another way to further up the ante in those pumpkin muffins, if you will. You could infuse the flour, the oil, the sugar, maybe even the salt. You infuse everything, practically half the ingredients that go into those pumpkin muffins. And then you could, if you're looking for that kind of real hit, then I'm sure that would accomplish it. It might make calculating how much THC is in your muffins a little more intensive, but I'm sure they'd be very strong. But I wanted to really see how strong these would be with just the cannabis flower. And I also really wanted to take note of the taste, because again, I feel like the pitas weren't the perfect benchmark. I'm not really sure why, but I wanted to test it out again. So here I am. Maybe I just need an excuse to make chocolate chip cookies and just share them with you guys. And, so why not? I can make an episode about whatever I want, can't I, at the end of the day? But what I found in the end, and what I did basically, is just like it was in the original recipe that I'll link to as well, if you don't want to go back and find it, is that I just substituted the cup of infused flour for a cup used in the recipe. And the recipe I weighed it out because it was all in grams. And I'm really sorry. The recipe that I pulled from the website is all in grams. You could change the unit of measurement into an imperial, but it was all in ounces. And that seemed to make it less useful, if that makes sense, because all in ounces, to me, it would have been easier if it was in cups, tablespoons, teaspoons, but that's not how they converted it. So I left it in grams. This is one that you might want to actually pull out the old kitchen scale and scale out the ingredients, because it does tend to be a little more precise in the end. And it's a smart thing to do for a lot of baking that you're doing. I always scale out my ingredients when I'm doing bread. And I am happy to say that my sourdough bread turns out beautifully every time now, even though I was having a lot of trouble with it pre-pandemic. And then I had some time to sort of sort out my issues. So if you have questions about sourdough bread, I can maybe answer a couple of them. I'm by no means an expert, but I have figured a few things out. But I digress. So you are going to want to scale out the ingredients for this particular one, or just substitute it for any old other cookie recipe. But this one was a really good recipe. So if you want to try that one. But what I did was, I think if it was like 400 grams of flour, for instance, I don't have the recipe in front of me, then I scaled out that flour, and then I just threw in what would be the equivalent of if I was throwing in 1 cup. Like I was substituting a cup of the infused flour. So I added the however many grams that I used. I calculated roughly, because I was using already vaped cannabis. So this was pretty much, for the most part, legal weed that I bought in the dispensary. And so I can maybe guesstimate the average THC potency, because all the already vaped cannabis goes into the same jar. I certainly don't separate it out per strain or whatever, because that's just, I just can't be bothered to do that. And so that's what I was using. So if you do have a dry herb vaporizer and you're saving it, this is a great way to use it because it's already ground up and you want that cannabis to be ground up fine when you're adding it into the flour. So that's what I was using. And I put it in with the flour. And of course, you could infuse this other ways, but like I said, I was trying to find out what the taste was going to be like. I baked them according to the directions. Now, in the recipe, I think it says to bake them for like 12 to 13 minutes. I found for me, it needed more time than that. And I don't know if it was me doing something wrong, but I found they needed a little bit more time to get browning. I also did 2 pans at a time, and maybe I should have just done one, but I was a little crunched for time when I did it. In the end, it took a little longer, but they are delicious. And I'm happy to report that cannabis taste is super mild. Now, you can taste it a little bit and maybe that's because I know it's there and I'm kind of expecting it. I'm expecting a bit of a green taste, but really it's pretty subtle. And it's masked a lot by the other ingredients and the chocolate chips. There's all kinds of recipes where you probably wouldn't notice the taste at all because the flavors are strong. For instance, like a pumpkin muffin, which has things like cinnamon in it and stuff like that, or other delightful fall recipes might also be great at masking the taste of the canna flour. So if you're thinking of like a zucchini bread or something, zucchini bread, that's something I should probably try, but you're not going to really notice the taste. And the ultimate test for this, is the fact that my husband ate a cookie. Actually, I think he ate half of one because he just wanted to err on the side of caution. And he said you didn't really notice the taste either. And for him, he notices those things. And if they were super weedy or green tasting, he would be the first person to tell me. So, in fact, you know what? Let me see if I can get him in here for a second. So you know what, you guys, I could talk all day about these cookies and tell you that they taste really good and you barely tasted the weed taste, but my toughest critic is probably my husband, Chris. So I brought him in here just to get his consensus on what he thinks about these cookies. Now, Chris, these are just going to be some hard-hitting questions. First of all, I know you're not eating a ton of edibles right now and you decided to take a bite of these cookies. Why?
Well, first, I want to talk about the idea that I'm your toughest critic. I'm going to call bullshit right there and just say that everybody knows when it comes to food, I just give the straight truth on the matter. It's not a personal thing, Marge. You know what I mean? So it's not about being a critic. But why did I eat the cookies? I don't know, because we never have like any tasty, sugary treats in the house, and I think, Marge, you do it on purpose. Is all because you're like trying to make me eat edibles all the time, so you just leave these delicious cookies.
Okay, maybe that's true.
On the counter for me to look at. They're not even like in a cupboard; they're out on display
for easy access.
Yes, and I just felt like eating a cookie. And I didn't even know. You kind of said, what cookies do you want? So I thought maybe, and there's 2 batches, I thought maybe one of them actually isn't infused.
You know me better than that.
And yeah, I did. So I only ate half of the cookie just in case. And it was delicious.
Excellent. Now, I appreciate that thorough answer. Now, the next question. These ones were made with canna flour. Chris, your thoughts on the weed taste in that chocolate chip cookie?
I guess I can only compare it to previous cookies where I felt the weed taste was like maybe like a 5% to 0% taste. Like there's none whatsoever. But these ones, there was a low key taste. It wasn't invasive or intense in any fashion. Maybe it was like a 10-15% sort of.
So we're going from a 0 to 5% being 0%, no weed taste whatsoever, to perhaps a 10 to 15%. Did it affect your enjoyment of said cookie, Chris?
No, they were delicious. You made them extra like fat. These were like super fat ass cookies. And so the outside was like really kind of crispy, but the whole inside was just like, they'd just been cooked not long ago too. And it was just kind of warm and soft, and it was fantastic.
So you got them when they were warm.
Yeah. Just a little bit. And yeah.
And so you enjoyed the cookies in the end.
Oh yeah, it was delicious. Yeah. It was super sugary, and it definitely quenched my sweet tooth.
Excellent. Well, there you have it, folks. You don't have to take it from me. My other armchair expert here, Chris Madden, with his thoughts on the Canna Flour chocolate chip cookies. Yeah, so he was just complaining again as he left my recording studio that he wished I'd made some regular chocolate chip cookies, but maybe I secretly am trying to get him to eat more edibles by having nothing not infused in the house, But I think that's also for me because I also have a huge sweet tooth, and if I have sweet stuff lying around, I'm probably going to eat it. And I'm one of those people where I can't just stop at one. Once I go for that first, hand in the bag, usually if we're talking something like gummy bears or whatever, one gummy bear leads to 46 gummy bears. I just don't really have a filter, but I've made the mistake of having too many chocolate chip cookies in a row. Fresh baked especially is particularly dangerous. And one of the only times I ever called into sick to work was because I overdosed myself on fresh baked cookies. So I know if they're infused that eating too many will make me feel awful, and I'm really not looking for that experience. So I infuse everything, and that way I can't get myself into too much trouble, and then I'm getting high while I'm at it, which is fun. So I think that's it for this week, my friends. I hope you give this recipe a try. If not, just try the Canna Flour and something that you might be preparing to make already to see how you like it. I think you'll find it very enjoyable. This inspiration for the Canna Flour, of course, came from Ardent Cannabis, the makers of that fantastic decarboxylator and infusion device. I think what I'm going to do is go eat one of those cookies right now and start thinking about next week's episode. But until next week, my friends, stay high. In this episode, I'm exploring Canna Flour chocolate chip cookies. Welcome to In this episode, we're looking at chocolate chip. Are you tired of trying edibles that are inconsistent in strength and flavor? Attempting to figure out your tolerance? Do you want to take control of your edibles experience and find the optimum combination of factors that results in the best outcome? If so, this edibles journal is perfect for you. The Bite Me Edibles Journal provides a convenient and organized way for you to track and record your edibles experience, whether it's homemade edibles or store-bought. It includes 48 fillable pages. It's sized 8.5 by 11 for plenty of writing space, includes information on calculating the potency of homemade edibles, and it was created by an edibles expert. Whether you're a seasoned edibles enthusiast or just starting out on your cannabis journey, the Bite Me Edibles Journal is an essential tool for anyone interested in enjoying their edibles to the fullest. Take control of your high life with this convenient and helpful resource. Add it to your Amazon cart today. Tap the link in the show notes.